Oh,
We're here.
Hi, everybody.
Okay. Hi, we're here. Happy Samhain, happy Halloween.
And
hello.
It looks like, oh, and Emma's back. Emma's back. We were worried.
Hello, hurrah, hurrah.
Goblins tried to take her away, but she was too tough, and she came right
not
back.
Not tonight, goblins.
That's right.
Yeah. We've got a really bad storm here in the UK at the moment, yes. So it might be interfering with everything. It's really bad. It's like a hurricane. It's shocking.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not dark and stormy night is a good way to start off this chat,
I mean,
right?
it's overcast in Kalamazoo, Michigan, so I guess we're matching the mood over here. So.
Oh.
I got sunshine.
Yeah.
I'll try to send you some.
Thank you. That would be nice.
I am feeling my Morticia vibes today, so I am good. So
good. Yeah.
So let's see. She says, thank you for joining us. Let's start with an introduction to each of you, your books, and perhaps a bit about your spiritual, magical backgrounds. Who wants to start?
Why don't we start with Emma?
Oh, okay. Hello. So, my name is Emma, and I live in Nottinghamshire in the UK. So you may be familiar with Robin Hood. It's that area. I have an upcoming book coming out with Llewellyn called Season Songs, and it very much reflects my practice. So at the core, I am an animist, but I practice witchcraft and obeah, which is, I generally tend to be a bit lazy sometimes and just call it Afro-Caribbean witchcraft. It's a spiritual and magical system from the Caribbean. So, yeah, it fits quite nicely with animism for me. So that's just me.
Do you have a copy of the book to show us?
I do indeed. Oh, it's a bit bright here. There we go. Perfect.
There we go.
Ooh, oh, that's so pretty.
I know. Yeah. The camera does not do it justice. I had a last minute.
No, it looks pretty. Okay, I'll have to look that up so we can see the cover even better because that looks fantastic. Yeah. When is that out?
Oh, December. But pre-orders are available now.
Nice.
Drop that link in the comments.
I shall indeed.
All right. So, Tudorbeth, how about you, especially since things may not be as stable as we like over there for the internet?
Hi, hello. I'm Tudorbeth. I'm sort of down the road, actually, Emma, from you, and you've disappeared off my screen, so that's kind of worrying. I'm over here in Lincolnshire. Oh, you're still there? Good, as long as you can still hear me. So we should really catch up sometime, you know.
We really need to
meet somewhere.
Yes,
we should. Yeah, so I'm over here on the Lincolnshire coast in a force 9 gale wind. It's been raining all the time, and I feel like I'm surrounded by a moat now. Anyway, so I've been writing. I'm going to be doing a bit of swimming later on, I think. Either that, I'll just get on my broomstick, and fly away, I hope. So yeah, I write the Hedge Witches little books, and the Hedge Witches spiritual craft. If you can tell from my appearance and the way we just don't care about anything. we are very much out there hedge witches. And I think it kind of shows in my books that I've written. I've got a little series. I don't know if you can see that there. The latest one is the Hedge Witches Little Book of Lunar Magic, in which I do talk about the Halloween moon as well. But it's one of a series, and also the Hedge Witches Little Book of Seasonal Magic, which, yes, I do also talk about Halloween in there as well. And the very first one kicked it all off with the Hedge Witches Little Book of Spells, Charms and Brews. And yes, Halloween's in there as well. I love Halloween. And the Hedge Witches Little Book of Flower Spells as well. Now, that's the only one that I don't talk about Halloween, but it's such a beautiful book, and I wanted to show it because the books kind of show the breadth of hedge witchery. So it's a very light, mystical, esoteric type of practice. And we are, like I say, we're out there. We're just completely out there. No two hedge witches are ever alike. So if we meet up, Emma, you're in for a surprise, because God knows what I'll be wearing. God knows what I'll look like. Who knows what color my hair may be tomorrow. I go with it, you know. I'm dictated to by my environment, and I just go with it. So whatever.
Just like the 4-year-old you always wanted to be.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. So, Mickey, I know that you delighted me with so much sass today. But and also because you were also on the Llewellyn Sabbath Essentials series as well. Am I remembering that correctly?
I illustrated all of the Sabbath Essentials. I didn't write one,
okay,
but I illustrated them. Yeah.
Yeah. So like this is the thing that has made this book that I wrote global, and that was a lot with you, and the art is just I don't know if you got to do the foreign translation ones. I think that each publisher had their own.
Yeah, but, I think that's right. I haven't seen what they look like, so I don't know if they used my illustrations or not, but I kind of hope they did.
I think some they did and some they didn't. Yeah. But we'll talk about mine later, because you have something on Samhain or Halloween recently as well.
Yes, I do. Well, I'm an author and an illustrator, and I wrote Llewellyn's Little Book of Halloween, which is a fun little book and full of Halloween stuff, full of Samhain stuff, and the intersection between the two. I love Halloween as well. I've also illustrated Mystical Cats Tarot, Magical Dogs Tarot, several other oracle decks that are out there, as well as I authored The Witch's Mirror, which is part of one of Llewellyn's other series, the Witch's Tool series, which I also got to illustrate all of those and then wrote one. And then I also have the upcoming book, which is Aquarius Witch, and that's coming out next spring. And I co-wrote that with Ivo Dominguez Jr. I don't have a copy of that yet because it's not out. I wish I'd thought to print the cover out because it's super pretty, but hopefully we can show that off pretty soon. But that is me in a nutshell.
So, hi, for those of you not familiar with me, obviously I tend to be a take charge type. That I cannot help this. I'm in my home. I'm Diana Rachel, for those who've been wondering how to pronounce it for who knows how many years. And about 10 years ago, I wrote this and the Mabon book for the Sabbath series, Essential series. And it has taken off in ways that I am still surprised by. And it has been translated into Polish, French, Spanish, I think 2 dialects of Spanish, and the one that makes me the happiest, aside from being Polish American, so of course being delighted that my family somehow found out about it, was that it got translated into Russian just about the time that Russia was trying to outlaw Halloween celebrations. So I just, the mischief activist and subversive in me is just so delighted by that, especially since Halloween's history in the United States is largely about trying to subvert subversives, because it actually does exist as a civic holiday because the vandalism from Mischief Night got so expensive that the government had to do something, and it was give the vandals candy so they stopped, and it kind of works because it limited the damage. But there were many other things in here. So as for who I am and what I practice, at the time I wrote this, I was eclectic Wiccan. I am one of those people that I commit to my path so fully that if I am presented with reason to change, I change. So because of a lot of things I've gone through that led to me writing the book Urban Magic, A Guide for the City Witch, and then other things that led to me writing Hex Twisting Counter Magic Spells for the Irritated Witch, I have shifted from something where the spirits, the deities, the gods are absolutely real to me, but I describe myself largely as an animist. I am engaged to a Finnish and Sami American shaman, and so who is also has indigenous heritage, and that's a big influence on me. And I was already
Like
doing the animism thing because animism is kind of a core to Polish cultural beliefs once you strip away the Catholicism. But, you know, Catholicism's a good enough container when we need it. So I've become far more spiritually fluid than I used to be. But this, like, even opening it up now, there are things in it where I'm like, wow, I think I was a better writer back then, but I'm a better performer now. But I'm glad I got the privilege of writing this. I got to, you know, I identify as a Celt, but I got to connect to things that I've never really understood, and I'm so grateful for that because it gave me some concept and understanding outside myself. So, hi.
I love that. That's a great book too. I referenced it when I wrote Llewellyn's Little Book of Halloween because it's excellent, very well written.
I kind of see it as something that has grown beyond me. This is not mine and was never meant to be. Like, originally the authors weren't even supposed to have their names on it, but in the translations, they always want the authors' names on it. So
I'm glad they did that. Yeah. I'm glad they did that. You work hard. You work hard on it.
I did. I was also, with my ex, was in the process of moving to California for a job with Google. While I was writing these books, I was writing up the end of the first draft as I was sitting on the couch and the movers were packing around me. So it was an adventure.
Oh my gosh, I bet. So, okay, it looks like we have a Llewellyn question. She says, thanks everyone. Mickey, this dovetails off something you said. Are Halloween and Samhain the same thing? Can they be celebrated simultaneously or in similar ways at the same time? That's a really good question. And I think that every witch is going to give you a different answer for that. I know a lot of people have different perspectives on it. My personal perspective is complicated because I do think of Halloween as being a more secular celebration, like you were talking about, Diana. But it's basically has blossomed off of the original celebration of Samhain and carries a lot of the symbolism and has kind of even pulled some of those practices along with it. Well, you know, these days, of course, it's become very commercialized in the United States. I think not as much so in the UK at this point, but I've heard people are now getting pumpkins there and things like that. So I personally celebrate both. And even during my Halloween celebration, I still feel very spiritual about it. Even when I'm passing candy out to the kids, I can almost sense the spirits, you know, are out to play, you know. So, you know, for me, it's both. Some years I will actually do my Halloween thing where I'm passing out candy to all the kids and doing all the things and maybe scaring people if I feel like it that year. And then, you know, later on that evening, I'll do my very quiet Samhain ritual. Usually includes bringing food outside and leaving it for the ancestors and things like that. Sometimes, some years, if my Halloween celebration is really big, I'll end up doing it maybe even the following day, doing Samhain the following day, just because I'm worn out. And, you know, just to get more in that sacred state of mind. What about everybody else? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I celebrate both. I'm a bit of a lush, so any excuse to celebrate. But I think, you know, with like Halloween, and so when my kids were little, and even when I was little myself and used to go trick-or-treating, for so many children, going out at nighttime in the dark, it's that first experience of actually doing something. So I always felt, even as a kid, and then when I was taking my own children, that it was almost a kind of spiritual experience in connecting with a familiar landscape that seemed transformed totally, simply because it was nighttime and a different day. So I always think for some of those kids who are a little bit weird and who kind of connect with that feeling, it's almost like the first in. So I always think there is something special about it. But I'm quite like you, Mickey, so I'll do the fun stuff, and then later on, when everything's settled down, it's more about the more personal kind of side of things, I think.
Yeah, I think, can I go next? Because, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Oh, great. The storm isn't influencing yet. Yeah, I'm very sort of similar. I think it's just the terminology with us, because a lot of my beliefs, a lot of Halloween stem from my parents, and I have a Northern Irish, Southern Scottish mother, and a Welsh did have. He's in spirit now, but Welsh, Southern Irish father, and both of that traditions. Mum's 82 now, so what, 70 odd years ago in Ireland. Not much money, but they celebrated Halloween. She loved Halloween. My mother loved Halloween, and they had turnips. They wouldn't have the pumpkin. The same with my father, and the same with me. I don't know if you had this, Emma, growing up, but we didn't have pumpkins. We had a swede, and so you would hollow out the swede to put the candle in. And so there's all these traditions, and it's marked up with history and a social memory of our past and of our families. And so to me, I mean, I love Halloween. I do love Halloween. It is, well, to me, it's my new year. It was always a new year for us, because we were a farming family as well as a fishing family. So it was always about the earth, the nature. And so these traditions of the turnip or the swede that I grew up with, it was very serious, even though it was mischief night, even though it was fun, you can dress up and play scare, boo at each other and all the rest of it. There was a seriousness with it, and growing up in the family that I grew up in, it was made apparent. A little bit more onto that. There's something about, if you're Irish, you'll understand. We make jokes about death. We look at it lightly. There's lots of jokes about cemeteries or dying or funerals, and some brilliant comedians did a whole show on like Dave Allen used to do about funerals in Ireland. And it's such a huge part of our tradition to find the funny side of death. I know it sounds terrible, but within that, there is this reverence that we bring to it as well, this knowledge of the turnip or the swede growing in the darkness of the earth. It grows within the earth, whereas the pumpkin grows on top. And so we would take that pumpkin or turnip out, hollow it out, and put the light of the candle inside, meaning the light is forever there. It doesn't die. It's always there. The light brings warmth and light to the darkness. So these little tiny fragments of images and symbols was very important to us. So I call it Halloween. Family calls it Halloween. Some members call it Sound. I mean, that's their dialect and the way they speak. But yeah, Sound. So there you go. That's for what it's very serious, but it's also tremendous good fun. And as I've eaten about 3 bags of candy so far, I'm not going to say anything.
My partner works in community mental health. Gallows humor has always been a thing for both of us.
Yeah.
Also, I am a psychic. I started seeing the dead when I was too young to know what I was seeing. But I wanted to share, when I lived in the Twin Cities, there was a Celtic Reconstructionist group where they would have turnip carving every year. And it is a different energy from pumpkins. It's also a lot harder to do. So, oh my gosh, I would make that thing or stick it
really hard. Yeah,
yeah. But so for me, like, I grew up with a mother who thought all things Halloween were satanic, but social climbing was also important. So there was a weird cognitive dissonance. So I finally realized that if there is a single God, it was kind of using me to send the middle finger to her for a lot of things. But one of them, because of course her daughter ends up reading a book and so on in Halloween that goes global, which is cool. Just tell you something, Mom. Maybe learn. But one of the things over the years is my kids actually, since I came along, since they're my stepchildren, they adopted me like actively before I was, or my partner was signed on. Like, okay, I guess I have kids. But they asked me to do like one of the Polish traditions. And again, I was also kept away from my Polish culture growing up for social status reasons specific to the United States. And so my ancestors have been trying to find me anyway, and they were trying to find me when I was very young because this was something that came with those genetics. So I will do Tsiati at a couple times a year, and that is a specific time to talk with the ancestors. So we will have an ancestors meal where it is a candlelit meal where we have cooked everything. And before I had kids, what I would do, because again, I am a city priestess and community work is part of that, is have friends and family over. And we would have the candlelit meal and we would read poetry and do storytelling by candlelight. And then we would do divination that was meant to be taken very seriously. But it was still somewhat informal. There was always a lot of dirty jokes. And something would always get inappropriate because that's how the best parties work. And some of the dirty jokes would be heard and relayed from ancestors that came. I'm just trying not to think about that being my great-great-grandma. But one of the other parts, and this is as I have moved into my animism and more of the ancestral memory as opposed to learned tradition, is I do city priest work, which means when there are stray dead who have finished their time and they decide they want more than a year and a day to walk the earth, I'm one of a few people they come to for their final release and that final energy work. So there's a period of time where my partner is doing psychopomp work for their people and I'm doing psychopomp work for mine. And those are times we do our best to make sure the kids are not home when we do it, because it can get gnarly. Because you see and hear things that, well, I'm glad I have a therapist. I don't know exactly what it does for the whole community, but my community is not just human. It is land, it is water, it is city, it is things we perceive as inorganic. And so if this is part of my service to the community, I have to trust that what I am doing is having a healthy and balancing and nurturing impact somewhere. So yes, I celebrate Halloween. I try to work it in, but even when I want to be frivolous, it never stays frivolous.
I love that.
Yeah. I guess it kind of makes sense, you know, because in Haitian Voodoo, you know, sorry, my dog's just coming to the... sorry. Okay. So we celebrate the Guy Day at this time, and, you know, what's interesting with Guy Day, so they're often deaf lower, so most popular is Baron Samedi. But often they're quite well known for being lewd, telling really dirty jokes and stuff like that. And yet they are so powerful and so serious. So I don't know, maybe it's just something in the undercurrent at this time of year. If anybody
has the right to tell us not to take life seriously, it is the dead.
Indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it looks like we have another Llewellyn question, and Emma, maybe you can touch on this too. They say you've all mentioned a few ways, but what are some of the other of your favorite ways to celebrate or honor the Samhain Sabbath?
Oh, so I have a few, and it depends who or what I want to honor at that time. So as an animist, spirit work for me obviously involves nature spirits, land spirits. And so I often quite like to go out into nature. At this time of year, it's very much just about being present, observing the changes, and kind of trying to live in sync with those changes as well, and just to quieten and listen to whatever the land has to tell us. But then there's the other side, which is very much ancestor related. One of my favourite things to do is hold a dumb supper. And the first time I ever went to one, oh my God, they're just so powerful. And you think it's going to be so weird. I'm going to be so awkward. I'm going to hate it. But it's just so powerful from the moment you step in. And I think they have to be quite well run, so everybody knows, like, you know, and the person who hosted it, they were brilliant. So beforehand, just like sending emails with, you know, things like where the toilet was, what to do on arrival, what to expect. So they're really powerful, but there's so many little ways. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to write season songs was that we get so hooked up on it being a specific day, a specific time. And so for me, it's a season to honour our beloved dead. And so there's lots of little things like, if you're lucky enough to live near where they are buried or where they are laid to rest, going and taking care of the grave is just like a really practical, but yet, I don't know, it's just really touching and moving to do that. And you get a kind of peace from it. It sounds a bit corny, but you do. And cemeteries are just lovely places anyway. So.
They
Oh,
really
yeah.
are, yeah. And Deborah Blake is one of our fellow authors, is in the comments and mentioned the Dumb Supper. In fact, she had made a comment earlier on, so and said it was really powerful.
Yeah.
I have not done that yet, and it's something that I would love to do. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
What about you, Tudorbeth? Do you do that in your practice?
Well, it's a bit like Emma. It depends what's going on in the year, basically. The past couple of years, I've had a number of very close family passings. So we have a tradition that we don't contact those that have passed on within that year. We give them space. We have space, they have space to adjust on that side. So some people would say they go to a medium and this, that, and the other after a couple of weeks or months when somebody's passed, but we don't do that in my family. We give at least a year. So the past couple of years, we haven't really done it. I don't think we're going to do it this year either. However, saying that, the Halloween for us and the celebration was not just one day. It lasted at least 3 days with us, because we would have the supper, and we would also have the days before. We would have parties, we'd have meals, and we also would have what was called a Remembrance Day, which is a bit similar to what you're talking about, but it was the entire day. So there was many traditions that we would do. Like I say, this year I'm not too sure as I will have that Remembrance Supper. Yeah, it's still a bit too close. So we lost quite a number of male members of the family in the past 3 years. I just recently lost my uncle this year. The year before I lost my brother. And the year before that, I lost my uncle. Yeah, so it's been a transitional time of year. But what we will do, there will be candles everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And I think it will be very solemn this year as well. It starts on the 27th, actually, our sort of remembrance and festival type of thing that we do for this type of year. I'm holding my Whitby Jet at the moment. I love my Whitby Jet. But yeah, so there you go.
Tudorbeth, what is remembered lives. Sorry for your losses, but what is
Definitely.
Yeah, this is it. We have, and also at this time, I don't know if you guys will experience this with that remembrance as well, but leading up to it, there'll be like weird things happening in the house, like lights going on and off, things disappearing, and you'll go, Uncle Tom, can you please bring that back? I know it's you. Can you bring me my keys? We no longer say to the fairies, can you bring the stuff back? Can you, it's the family members, because it's some things that they would do. And it's like, my mother had like this bay window and she had these curtains. And one of my uncles used to like pretend he was on stage and used to jump out at Christmas, at Halloween and do it. And I'm not kidding you, the other year, these curtains jumped out. And we're like, oh, Uncle Davey, you're still trying to scare us there.
Oh, that's funny.
So
That's amazing.
It's around us like all the time. You don't forget.
No.
For me, again, some of this comes back to me being psychic in a family that didn't necessarily support that. Now I am in a family that absolutely does, and I live with a shaman, and I do psychopomp work too. And so for us, one, I have found that laying down some rules with the spirit saves hundreds on my electricity bill. You can always tell one of the first things after when I'm asked to unhaunt a house is, how's your electricity bill? How many light bulbs are you going through? Because telling them to find something else for energy to interact here saves so much money. Um, and I have more than once gotten things to leave by asking them to wash the dishes or playing Don't Worry, Be Happy on repeat until everything leaves. Be prepared for some poltergeist activity and have a door open to make it go faster. I'm not actually joking, but it is hilarious, but these things actually work.
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
I survived the being raised to be a skeptical rationalist and being organically what I am with this type of humor. Also, mischief is a superpower, and sometimes I prank the ghosts back, and I can't. But for me, the season basically begins right around the autumn equinox and isn't over until about a week before the winter solstice. There's always stuff going on. There is wild hunt stuff that has, because the fairies in the United States are immigrant spirits, because some of them came with us. And sometimes they interact well with the indigenous spirits and sometimes they don't. And that can be part of the community harmonization too. So there is making medicine for the Fae. There's making medicine that the animistic spirits request. There's a lot. It looks like I'm over my stove. Basically, my core is kitchen witchcraft, but I'm cooking for things nobody else seems to be able to see except my partner. And we will have, because we have an really old house used to be an apple orchard that became an asphalt company that is now our house, and we're only the second family to be in it. So the house itself has opinions. And has opinions about how I should be handling this time of year. And she doesn't always approve of how I handle things. And I am literally getting up every morning from about September 23rd, and I will be until about December 15th, walking down my stairs saying, if you're here to see me, out in the side yard. If you're here to see the shaman, out in the lower yard. And we will get to you when we can.
Take a number. Right?
It's not meant to be disrespectful. If we operate by the laws of hospitality, if you come into our space, you need to agree to our rules and safety. The Fae have learned don't do that because they don't like how I do things, so they can stay outside where they're happier. Other things like to see what they can do, and it's very radically different from what I was doing when I was Wiccan, where it's if I don't know what it is, it needs to get out of here. And I've noticed that the activity has increased, but the impact of the activity has decreased as I've been more willing to commit to a more allied role with the dead, with the land, with everything. And it's just less work, but it's also more of my organic day-to-day life. So I don't necessarily have specific holiday things unless my children ask for them. And I mean, I'm showing up at holiday things. Tomorrow I'm going to be surrounded by drunk modern Vikings, and I'm choosing to do so. Because I'm going to be playing at a local Viking fair that's run by a local mead tap room. So I go and I do the fun things in the haunted houses, but I just don't react the way I used to. Like the last haunted house I went to, a guy, like somebody misdirected me down a maze, and my partner had to stop me because I'm like, oh, there's a wall in my way. I guess the wall needs to go. And it comes from being a spirit worker. That's just, I don't think about things the same way anymore. Not even about Samhain or Halloween.
It definitely does change your perspective. You're right. All of our spiritual work, I think, does change your perspective on things.
It just keeps changing. Does. There's just no bottom.
Yeah. And in my practice, which is just very much a homespun practice out of everything I've read and everything that I've tried over the years, I basically just identify as a witch. So it's a very broad description for me. But for my Samhain practice, it's usually kind of low key. Physically, what you would see happening wouldn't be a lot. It's all kind of happening here and here. I spend a lot of time, thinking about and interacting with the ancestor spirits that are on board with all of my shenanigans. Not all of them, probably, but a great many of them. And also remembering, but my beloved dead as well, the friends and family that have passed on through the years. And I do that in a different way, basically every year. It's kind of extemporaneous, but then, and then a lot of my practice revolves around, just that thoughtful mindfulness, that slowing down that we feel, this time of the year. And it's almost as if the celebration of Halloween is that kind of like everything's, super busy, super wild, and I've got people coming and going, and the energy is really high. And then as soon as that is over with, I feel like I can slip into that completely 100% Samhain state of mind where it's just everything kind of slows down. And then you can kind of sense what's really happening behind all of the fun and the chaos and that. I do also love to look, back at my ancestors' practices and try to bring some of those things into my celebrations. Like Tudorbeth and Emma were talking about the turnips, and I really learned about that, just within the last 10 years. I don't know how time works, so recently we'll say recently. And but the first time that I tried carving a turnip instead of a jack-o'-lantern, turnip jack-o'-lantern instead of a pumpkin, I was hooked. And now I do that every year because I feel like it ties me to my ancestors, that some of them come from where you ladies are. And so I love that. And I have to have one now every year, at least one on Samhain night. And yeah, it's cool. And somebody mentioned, I think her name was Anna, someone mentioned in the comments that if you haven't seen a turnip jack-o'-lantern, just Google it. It's worth it.
They're cool.
Yeah.
They're cool. I do not have the patience or physical strength. I would use an apple core and sheet and just.
Well, that's what I use a melon baller. I figured that out, and it works so much faster.
Everyone thinks they're unitaxed and they're so not.
Yeah, I did it on YouTube, and it's not too bad if you use a melon baller, but yikes. Yeah, it's a very different experience. Definitely.
Oh. It's because they're so small as well, and you can't, they're not as good as a pumpkin, I gotta admit. I mean, we've got pumpkin farmers now, haven't we, Emma? We go out in the country and you can get you go on the hay ride.
In fact, my son takes his girlfriend at the weekend to one.
I am just truly American for the subtlety a turnip requires.
Yeah. There you go. They have a different scent to them too. You don't think about it, but yeah, it kind of smells a little like dinner, and I'm not mad at it. I saved a little inside parts, and I put them in a soup later on in the year to kind of bring that Samhain energy through. But pro tip, I do that with my pumpkins too. I save them, I cut them up and get the insides out and use it for pumpkin pie later on. So
okay, looks like we've got another Llewellyn question.
Good.
Thank you, everyone. You've all touched on working with spirits and ancestors during the season. Can you touch on why the veil between the worlds is thinnest this time of year? Some additional ways we can commune with them. Boundaries, people. Okay, I will start with this one just because I do co-own a metaphysical business that makes spirit boards. If you're going to play with a Ouija board or a spirit board, do some due diligence and research instead of just jumping on there from what you saw in a movie, because a good chunk of the hauntings you get from those you deserve for being disrespectful. So spirit boards came around after the Civil War when people's loved ones did not return home and they had no way of finding out if they were alive, dead, or just avoiding the crap out of them. And I even had a member of my family who became a spiritualist because his son disappeared in World War II during the Holocaust. So this was one of the only ways he had of finding out what happened to his son. And there is some ancestor work to be done there still. If you're going to use a spirit board to have a direct conversation, know exactly who you're talking to, make sure it is more than a year in the day. Tudorbeth's tradition is based on something very factual in that the dead need some space. And the dead need to process and heal as well. And then you still have choices after the dead, and they can choose to talk to you or not, and you need to respect that. If you operate with the laws of hospitality, I frequently work indoors, so I do. It is, you very clearly state it and state that if you are in my home, we agree we do not harm each other, and you may have a list of ways you may not harm or trick one another. with the understanding that the minute one of those laws is violated, it is all your power and all your decision. But you make sure that you ask for a specific person, not if anybody is there. You make sure there is an offering out. It is extremely poor manners to invite someone over and not even have something to drink for them. Often it is tradition to make sure that you take a sample. At least in my tradition, you ask what you take, you show, you drink a little bit of the water, you take a little bit of food to show it is not poisoned and that it is safe to consume. There are certain entities that communicate that way that are allergic to me, so then I have a buddy who is able to consume in my stead. But if you're going to use a Ouija board, paranormal activity is not a freaking guideline. So that's what I have to say about that.
All good advice.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I think in my practice, ancestor work is all year round, although we do emphasise it a lot at this time of year. And I think maybe the reason for that is because we are looking inwards more towards ourselves, perhaps, and wanting to kind of do that inner shadow work and all of that stuff. One of the favourite things I like to do is I like to craft spirit jars and vessels, because not only is it a good way of incorporating all the other aspects of my craft. So I am a keen forager, which goes into like building relationship with the land and all of that jazz. But they act as anchors for the spirit when you're doing work with them. And if you're making one for an ancestor who you know, then you can fill it with lots of stuff they like. So I have one for my grandma and I have a piece of jewellery in it that's from her and other items like that. One of the things I really love to do as well, especially at this time of year, because it's all dark and, you know, it's a good excuse to get your candles out, is I like to, and I don't really have a name for it. Someone I know calls it eye gazing, but I like to look in the mirror. And you have to kind of get this technique where you're kind of looking, but you're looking through. So you're not really looking at your reflection. You're kind of looking through the mirror. And it's really strange because after a while you see your face start to change. And so what I like to do is I like to work with particular spirits. So spirits that I know when I'm doing this. And like Diana says, it's about calling to them. So I often use their full name. And if you know their lineage as far back as you can, so so-and-so, son of so-and-so and so-and-so. And I don't know, it's a really good experience. I always think everybody should do that once, just to kind of experiment. Because for me, experimentation is key in all kind of magical practice. It's just how we figure stuff out, isn't it, I guess? But they're some of my favourite things to do.
What you just
that's... Yeah, I was just about to say it sounded very much like scrying.
Yes,
and it's a fascinating pastime experience to learn is scrying. You can scry with the bowl of water. Yeah. You can scry with the candle, with the mirror. I talk about it quite often. It's one of the key ways that we used to connect. It used to be for fortune telling, to see the future, or to see if we'd got a query or a question or something like that. My mother used to do it, but my mother is still is highly spiritual, and as a child she used to do that in the mirror on the dressing table, and she used to see different faces and what have you coming out and all the rest of it. And she ended up being a medium, but it's if you're not aware of that, it's kind of it's a very frightening experience. And what I've often taught people is, your screens, your black screens, like your smartphones and things like that. You can use modern technology nowadays to take the place of the black obsidian bowl or the mirror, because it is that reflection. And I have on occasion in my youth gone round on a ghost haunt and things, and used that kind of screen to be, and you look in the screen as a reflection, and you look behind you and you can see things. So I don't want to scare anybody, but you can try. If you wanted to try that on Halloween night, go ahead, guys. Go walk through the cemetery and that.
I mean, part of getting into spiritual practice is learning how to sit with discomfort, including things that scare the crap out of you. Have any of you ever been thrown off of a ghost hunt for ruining it for others by going, no, the ghosts are over there?
That's amazing. I love that.
If you put the orb photos, they're over there. Somebody paid a lot for this very haunted house not to be haunted. They did a good job too. They're over there now.
Yeah, I don't get invited to these things anymore. They go, no, we're not inviting you anymore, Sarah. That's my real name, Sarah. We're not inviting you anymore to these things.
Yeah, my business partner won't let me come with her and her paranormal stuff. It's just like, no, I wouldn't be surprised.
That's great. You know, too, though, to what we were talking about, as well, Tudorbeth had mentioned earlier, and it really sparked something in my mind when you were talking about, you know, this time of year being, you know, the reason that we start everything over is because the harvest is done. And you know, everything's gone down into the earth, and there's the growth season is over. It's officially over. And I think part of that question was, can you touch on why the veil between the worlds is the thinnest this time of the year? And I think that would point to a big part of that reason. You know, a long time before now, you couldn't go to the grocery store to buy food. You were counting on what you harvested. So yeah, everybody was thinking about death a lot more because this is what we've got. And now we know winter's coming and we've got to make it all the way through. So you felt like maybe we want to reach out to our ancestors who made it through and figure out how they did it and do the same and things like that. I think that kind of collectively we've brought this down through our subconscious, as well as being tied in with the cycles of the land, like both Emma Kathryn and Tudorbeth have talked about, you know, as it being part of the wheel of the year. And that I think that's one of the reasons why we think of this time as being the time of the thin veil, is because, you know, the land has died off. Yeah. And it's everything that's still alive is underneath, is living under that ground. And when people are connecting with that energy, then it makes sense that we would be able to tap in easier.
I just want to add, I think there is a planetary something going on, and I would love to pick Evo's brain or someone who does a lot of astrology, because they'll get in at Beltane too. See different things coming through the veil. So I do think there is something planetary where there is a shifting balance. So that membrane or whatever it is just thinning on both sides so that things can flow back.
Yes, I agree. And I almost think of it as being like a hinge on both sides of the wheels. Yeah.
So apparently
almost like it's a hinge, and those are like big turning points, Beltane and Samhain.
Okay, so we're being told to be safe ourselves, and what is the one thing, only one, that you want folks to know about celebrating Samhain?
Oh, only one?
Right, mean, right?
I know.
I'll give you one off the top of my head, is just learn everything that you can, read everything that you can, and then celebrate the way it feels right to you, the way you feel it in your heart. And I think that's just a beautiful thing.
I agree. And I would say if you're not too sure about working with your beloved dead and any kind of spirits, spirit work encompasses so many aspects. So, you know, you can work with the spirits of the land. Pretty much what Mickey said, you can tailor it to what works for you and what feels right for you. So have fun with it.
For me, mischief.
I think.
No, go ahead.
Go on. Oh, I was going to just say two things. Very first important one. Sorry, I have to make two. Respect. Number one is respect. Respect everything, including those that have passed on, but respect yourself as well. And that leads on to resolution. This time of year is resolution, meaning your resolutions, if you set them, look at them, don't think you failed. You think, okay, I'm starting again. I can take from that and I can move on. So respect the past, respect those that are in spirit, and respect yourself, and resolutions. That is Halloween.
The only thing you need to know is that mischief, reverence, and respect do not have to be incompatible, but you do need to be creative.
Love that.
Yeah.
See, we behaved.
We behave.
I love that. Happy Halloween and blessed
We didn't want to.
Yes, have a good one.
You happy sound.
Yes,
happy
blessed be.
happy Aptana, happy everything.
Yes, yes. Have a safe and happy one.